Hello and welcome to Contra Mundum. I am your host, Pastor Andrew Isker, and please welcome my co-host, CJay Engel. Hello, CJay.
Hello, Andrew. Good to be here.
How are you this week, CJay?
Same as usual. Good. Excited to get going on this. This is my third recording for the day.
Oh yeah, you are.
I'm not tired. I promise.
Yeah, you're just powering through it. You are powered by Greco gum.
Greco gum and kombucha.
Very good. Very good. Well, yeah, I hope you're having a great week. I hope all of you out there are having a great week as well. There's plenty to talk about. The big news this week, of course, came down on Monday, and that was the firing of Tucker Carlson from Tucker Carlson Tonight from Fox News. So we've referenced him a bunch. We've had clips of his, things like that on the show before. And it didn't come as a huge shock that they would fire him. I've kind of expected this shoe to fall, really any time in the last 4 or 5 years, to be honest. I'm somewhat surprised he's lasted this as long as he has. But even so, all that considered, it still was, fairly surprising. It was not a thing I expected to see this week. So CJay, what are your thoughts on Tucker Carlson's demise at Fox News?
There's a lot. I mean, the fact that they would want him gone is obvious. Doesn't even need to be stated. Really, He was really difficult to control, and part of the reason he was difficult to control is just because of his own personality. He wants to cover what he wants to cover, and he knows that. He's the most powerful man in media because he's so popular. Losing Tucker is a really big hit to the branding, Fox News themselves. So it doesn't surprise me. The timing is interesting, of course. It's always interesting. Why now? You always have to ask that question.
Oh, yeah.
My opinion, I think an underrated aspect to this is the deal that was made with McCarthy and the J6 footage. I don't think that... I don't think that they wanted to capitulate on so many of those pressure points that Matt Gaetz and all his rebels or whatever, they were really trying to get some things in their favor. And McCarthy, how many weeks did he go trying to get them to vote for him? They went a long time, 12 different voting sessions or something insane. And one of the things that they wanted, I think one of the deals that they made was that they would give Tucker the footage, and they gave it all to him. And he did one episode on it, and then that was it. And then they axed Tucker. Part of me thinks that was part of the deal is to accept the footage and then axe Tucker eventually. That was I think that was kind of in the cards because they need that J6 narrative. I think it's really important for the regime going forward because they have to have an enemy that they're rallying around, and the heritage Americans, anyone on America First, I think is part of that enemy class. And I think that they cannot have someone like Tucker with the biggest audience in the world, giving an alternative view on it. So that I think that has been in the cards for a while. Personally, I think it was part of the deal that was made, that McCarthy made, personally. So that's one thing. And then also the 2024 elections are coming up. Tucker's just increasingly red-pilled, so to speak, on the importance of religion, the importance of family, the importance of having concerns outside of GDP and individualism, and all of the rhetoric of rights and trans rights and all this stuff. I think he is waking people, appealing to a lot of people's difficulty with accepting present regime narratives, and they just had to let him go.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, asking the question, well, why now? There are so many things that he covers that it could be any one of them. I mean, it could be the J6 stuff. I saw people speculating. He had an episode last week about Pfizer and being critical of Pfizer.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that James O'Keefe gets canned by Project Veritas after doing a really powerful, effective video sting on a Pfizer executive, and he gets canned immediately. And then Tucker gets let go a couple
Mm-hmm.
days after that too. I mean, that's somewhat suspicious, but it's one of those things where it's like a bad murder mystery movie where or like Murder on the Orient Express type thing where it's like, well, who done it? It could be any one of these people, and it's like,
Or all of them.
or
Like,
all
so,
of them
like,
together.
yeah,
Yes.
seriously. Like, I think they were just increasingly frustrated with him.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You
you know,
saw the
like,
thing that the Pentagon said, right?
yeah, of course,
Like,
they
this
have to
is
do
great for America. Yeah.
yeah, it's part of the victory lap. So, like, it just tells you that they were behind, like, they were involved in, like, all these people are involved in, like, getting him off air. Like, they're all
Yeah.
pressure points. Who benefits from Tucker not being able to expose, like, the Ukraine stuff?
Yeah.
Like, that was a
A
big part of it
lot of
too.
people.
You know,
Oh,
like,
Ukraine is a huge one. Yeah.
Tucker was the only one interviewing anybody with an alternative perspective on Ukraine.
Yeah. I mean, he had like Douglas McGregor on there all the
Yeah,
time.
he
And
he had that one. Who's that young guy? Like, who's like really pro Putin? I forget his name, but Tucker had him on.
I'm not sure.
But like, yeah, I mean, but Tucker was just willing to buck these narratives.
Yeah, yeah, because like the alternative is Sean Hannity, like totally brain dead bozo. I mean, 98 IQ crayon
Yeah.
eater, and like
And he benefited from being after Tucker because people would just leave their
oh yeah,
televisions on.
yeah,
Like, I don't know who's gonna watch him now.
yeah. Well, and the other thing is like I remember there was at one point it was during the Trump years. Um, there was a
Yeah.
transition between Hannity and Tucker where they like hand the show off to each other or whatever, and they stopped doing that after this because they like got into a fight on air over I can't remember what it
No,
was.
no,
I think
no.
it was
Yeah.
Syria or something like that. Yeah.
Well, was it that, or was it the capitalism one where like Tucker was going hard against corporations, and then
Oh
Hannity
yeah.
takes over, and he's like,
Yes.
well, as long as it's voluntary and the buyers are in on it, and Tucker just like
Yes,
gives that
that's what it was.
classic
Yeah.
Tucker look, because he was still on the screen, which was hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, because
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
after he had been denigrating
Yeah.
the corporation, so it's
Yeah, it was
pretty
the
funny.
Cabela's Bass Pro,
Yeah.
the Republican pro gay Republican donor, that shut down,
Which
like
one?
basically
Which
shut
one?
down. Yeah, be more specific there too. Um, and it's I can't even think of his name, but like singer, huge money this guy gives out, and he like destroyed the town in Nebraska where like Cabela's was based out of.
Mm-hmm.
Just out of like
Yeah.
petty resentment, and like
Yeah.
that's what the Tucker episode was on. Yeah, that's what it was. Now my memory's being jogged, and Hannity's like, the stupid corporatist, Ben Shapiro type. Well, if the market says it's okay, then it must be fine. And it's like, no, what? Are you kidding me? All these people are out of jobs, because of this horrible billionaire who hates us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's so many moments like that. I mean, and like you see, like Tucker Carlson tonight, it was it was so wonderful because we would be online and we would see people we know online that we follow, friends of ours
Yeah.
online, and their talking points would like be read verbatim by Tucker online. Like his writers all follow the same people we follow online.
Right.
And I remember like Martyr Made, Daryl Cooper, Tucker did the whole, like he had like maybe 100 tweet thread, and Tucker read the
Mhm.
entire thing on his show that night. And it was amazing, and it was just on the election and BLM riots, color revolution, all of this stuff. It was a fantastic thread, and Tucker boosted that, and it gave a voice to our guys.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge. I mean, in the near term, so I'm kind of two minds on this. It's you maybe disagree, but in the near term, it's a devastating loss. In the near, because having this guy on TV to counter these narratives and having him taken away is devastating loss. Huge loss. Because now it's just nothing but Sean Hannity's and Jesse Waters's and people like that all the way down. Just idiots that just parrot propaganda. And the the boomer con, like that generation, the generation that has lots of money. I mean, these are the people that fund politicians and are, I mean, they're people, laugh about this or joke or make fun of the boomers, but they have a lot of power. They have a lot of
Hmm.
financial power. And Tucker was taking them off the reservation a little bit, and now that's gone. Now it's just 24/7 hysterical GOP neocon propaganda here on out. So that's the bad. That's like the bad news in the near term. But I think in the long term, like Tucker didn't die. They didn't assassinate him. He is still
Yet.
immensely popular, and whatever he does next, and some of it is like, is there a is there's confusion about his contract. Like, is he just on the bench and is going to collect his paycheck and not and run out the rest of his contract until I think after the election in 2024? That's a possibility that
That'd
he's
be
just
great.
silenced for the
Yeah.
next 18 months.
Well, no, they
Um,
can't. They can't take him off air and shut him up. Like,
Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
like there. Yeah. I mean, no lawyer would sign that. Like, you have to. I'm sure. Like his whole "see you soon" thing. Like on afterward.
Hmm.
Like I bet I don't think he's gonna be quiet. Like, I don't think
No,
so at all.
no.
Like, that's just not in his personality either.
And apparently
Like,
they have compromising information on him, which is
yeah, that's what
like,
they always say. And then it's like
okay,
some like intern like that like said that he was like yelled at her in the coffee room or something. Like,
yeah.
it doesn't matter.
No, that's like, so they trotted out this gal who who said he was
Yeah, that's their playbook, that
hostile
he was
work environment.
abusive. Yeah, of
She
course.
never met him once. She
Yeah.
never in person ever saw
By
him
the
once in
way,
person.
Contra
Unbelievable.
Mundum is a hostile work environment. Before we went on
Very
air,
hostile.
Andrew was yelling at me, telling me to do my hair.
That's right.
It was offensive. Told me I needed to
Where's
get
the
back on the diet. It
Where's
was
the
horrible.
perm? Where is your Zoomer perm? You need to. There's a code. There's a
I'm gonna
dress
get.
code for Contra Mundum. You have to have hair like this.
I'll keep your paychecks flowing, but you're gonna get canned.
I'll have to be silent. See you soon. But yeah, that this gal that they brought, like, it's just a totally frivolous, ridiculous lawsuit. I mean, it's the stuff they do to Trump.
Yeah,
They just
that's their
bring some
playbook.
floozy out.
The
That's all they
funny thing
do.
is, like, they're so out of step with like the influence that Tucker has, and
Yeah.
like the fact that he's actually appealing to people, that they don't even realize that nobody buys these like people anymore. Like, no,
Yeah.
like, what was that? Who was that lady that like was this like whistleblower for Facebook? Remember that lady?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
nobody
yeah,
believes
yeah,
that. Like,
yeah.
that's what they have. That's what they do.
Whistleblower. Ooh.
Like, no.
They weren't censoring enough hate speech. Oh, you're blowing the whistle. Yeah, like,
Yeah,
it's
like
so
the fact that she
ridiculous.
come out, like, she's like, it's a hostile work environment. That actually makes Tucker sound pretty cool.
I know,
Like,
I know.
it's like, oh,
Like,
cool.
I mean, the part of her lawsuit is like, one of his producers, they had a bunch of like inflatable Christmas decorations, and she hated it because she's Jewish, and she's like, I hate Christmas, and she's this Grinch,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so
Like,
they
oh,
like
cool. Yeah.
they put like a post-it note on one of the trees and said, this is the menorah tree or something like that.
Like,
So that's the
I don't,
hostile work environment right there.
yeah, that sounds pretty based. Like, makes me like him even more. I don't know.
I know, it's just, I mean, it was so ridiculous. It's so silly.
The
But that's
viewership,
the stuff they do.
the viewership for his slot was like down 70% or something
Yeah.
on Tuesday.
There, even if they, I mean, one, it's like a pinch hitter. Okay, like, it's going to be less, but even if they bring in a full time host, like, there's literally
Like,
nobody
who?
they could bring
Who?
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one.
Yeah.
No one at all. Like, I mean, they could take somewhat other popular, ostensibly conservative guy like Ben Shapiro or something, and triple his salary from the Daily
Yeah.
Wire, and he would not. No one would care.
There's
Right.
only one person that could actually meet his ratings, and that's Joe Rogan. And
Yeah.
Joe Rogan is like, he's not going to do that, like.
Yeah. No, he's fine where he is, right?
Yeah.
He and that's
And
part of
Tucker's
it.
going to be better off too. Tucker's going to be better
yeah.
off too.
Yeah, that's the long term. I think is the good news is that traditional media and Torba had a post in Gab News about this, that traditional media is dying, right? When the boomer generation passes away, it's gonna be gone. Like, I mean, even like I was thinking about this. Everybody I know, like all my buddies, whether they're weird political junkies like us, or they're just grill Americans that like to watch sports and drink beer. None of them watch TV. None of
Mm-hmm.
them. Not a
Mm-hmm.
single one of them. I mean, like their TV watching will be like literally just the sports. Like
Mm-hmm.
they'll turn on the pro sports and then turn it off. They don't watch network television. They don't watch the news. They don't watch any of this stuff. Everyone just watches YouTube
Yeah.
or various platforms like that, or different streaming services. They'll watch TV shows, but they don't watch They don't like tune in to a certain episode at a certain time. That's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the only like he was the only thing that was keeping the millennial generation, our generation and younger, like to watch like appointment TV like that, where you tune in at 7 p.m. my time, Central Time, to watch Tucker. What's Tucker going to say tonight? I want to hear about this. Like, that was the only thing that people our age were doing. And it's the craziest stat I saw is that among I think it was the like 18 to 45 demographic among Democrats, he was tops.
Mm-hmm.
So he beat MSNBC and CNN, like the liberal networks. More
Yeah.
people who say they're Democrats our age were watching Tucker than anybody else.
Yeah.
Which tells you, I mean, some of what is it, hate watching? Some of it's probably that, but some of it is like he is the only
It's
person that had like a unique perspective on anything
it's
going on.
it's the war stuff. It's also the anti like internationalist corporation stuff.
Yeah,
It's like the defense of labor.
yeah,
It's like all those things are appealing to like the left. Like Bernie Sanders just came out and endorsed Biden, and it's like his whole crowd like looking for an alternative. They look to
what a
people like
joke.
Tucker. Like
Yeah,
Tucker would have people
yeah,
like Glenn Greenwald on,
yeah,
like just traditional progressives.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, because it's very clear this is a man who is genuinely curious about these great questions of our
Hmm.
day, and was not just going to parrot some propaganda line. He wanted to truly investigate what these things are about, and uncover great evils that are taking place as well. I mean, so many people think, like, because they talk about like the Dominion lawsuit. He says stuff he doesn't believe and blah blah blah. It's like, well, yeah, that's how like television works. Like you have an audience that you're trying to appease, so of course he's going to he's going to play certain things up or whatever else. Like, that's everything in that, like all the shocking texts of Tucker Carlson, like none of them to me
Well,
were all that surprising.
one of the funniest things is when the whole Sidney Powell thing was going down,
He was critical of her.
he was
Yeah,
criticized for being too harsh and not believing
yeah,
her. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
I know.
hilarious.
Yeah, and he was like the most skeptical of
Yeah.
all of the like the craziest, like Kraken and machine, Delta Force fighting a server in Germany kind of stuff.
That
Like, he
whole
was,
thing was a complete CIA psyop. It's crazy.
yeah, it was because it was to totally obfuscate everything,
Right.
right? To muddy the waters, to make hey, look over here at this really crazy stuff. When it was like they just stopped counting in the middle of the night in 6 states and stuffed
Yeah.
the ballots.
Right.
Like, that's
Right.
all. It's same kind of stuff they did in like in the 1960 election. They
So
did in 2020.
so in that case, is Tucker a spook?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, this is a good question.
Yeah,
For
it is. It is.
yeah, we're
I
shifting
go ba-
gears.
I go back and forth.
He's got the Kabbalah bracelet and all that kind of stuff.
I go
like,
back and forth. Like I think he
Me
is,
too. Yeah.
but like he's like Jack Posobiec. Like
Yeah.
there's certain factions within the intelligence community that want things in a certain way. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that they're like 100% on board with like pre-progressive, pre-administrative state like America, but at the
Mhm.
same time they want something like different than like the establishment CIA, like the guys in charge,
Yeah,
So
I don't know. Like, he's certainly of that world, right? I mean,
yeah,
his
of course
father.
he
I mean,
is.
people don't realize this. Like, his father was literally the head of Voice of America in
Yeah.
broadcasting into the Eastern Bloc during the Cold War. So his father was like the Tucker Carlson, broadcasting American propaganda into the Eastern Bloc. So like it's in his bloodline to be a quote unquote propagandist, right? That's what he does, and I don't use that word as like a pejorative. Like, there are good there are good
Yeah.
propagandists and bad. Like, there are things that are worthy of propagating.
You have to shape a national narrative. You have to
Yeah.
like that's just part
Yeah.
of the job. Yeah.
And I'm thankful that he's ours.
Right.
or at least maybe he is. And so, yeah, I go back and forth on it too. I mean, sometimes it's like it kind of doesn't matter at a certain level whether he is or not. I mean, you could
Oh,
get
come on.
real.
This is it's way too much fun to talk about this. It does
To
matter.
speculate. Let me find my tinfoil hat and I'll put it on quick. But no, yeah, maybe, and maybe he is. I mean, we've talked about maybe not on the show, but we've talked about Jack Posobiec, who retweeted me this week. So thank you,
Thank you.
Jack. I'm big fan of the show here.
Andrew is
Apparently,
controlled opposition too, by the
apparently
way.
I am. Yeah, I don't have my Kabbalah bracelet on, but no, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about those guys. I mean, that's always the danger of people who are narrative shapers is that who is pulling the strings at
Hmm.
some level, right?
Hmm.
There's is he totally independent? I don't know. Who's he totally loyal
So
to
like let me
or
so
not?
okay. I love Tucker. I love that he brought like red pills to the normies, like the older generation of normies.
Hmm.
I love that he exposed those people to like more radical like ways of thinking. Um, but I'm really critical of like the anti-China narratives, and Tucker has been really pushing those too.
He's
So
pushing
like
it hard.
he's
Yeah,
not beyond my own criticism
absolutely.
either. I mean, I can disagree with him on little things too, like the nature of like a political society and all that too. But like, I'm really not just skeptical, but I'm really wary of like what's going on with like pushing buttons in China. Like, I
Hmm.
really think there's something going on there, and I think there's certain aspects of like the geopolitical like American interest, like not American interest in like the traditional sense, but like American regime, Washington D.C. interests that
Hmm.
really want to pick a fight with China. And I think
Hmm.
it's insane and stupid. And it's been interesting to see him really pushing like Steve Bannon. But Steve Bannon has interesting connections too and all that. Like, like Steve
Yes, he
Bannon's part of
does.
that world too.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
all those guys are, but like they've been anti-China for years now, and that kind of makes me a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, I mean it's hard. It's hard not to be a little like. I mean we're living in an age of universal deceit, and so it's hard not to be cynical and skeptical of every single thing, um, just because. How do you trust anyone at all? Like how do you? It's impossible to. We're lied to about everything, and so
Yeah.
um, yeah, who knows? But I mean, at the end of the day, though, when I think about Tucker on the whole, um, he is he tells so many true things that are
Hmm.
that are forbidden from being
Hmm.
said. That I mean, even just talking about uh, replacing demographic replacement in America,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just like
Using
the
the words like that's
obvious fact of it,
yeah.
right? It's a fact, like a statistical fact, and it's like open policy that they want to do, and yet then if you talk about it, you're a conspiracy theorist. It's insane. I mean, the
Hmm.
level of propaganda just around that idea. So it took a tremendous amount of courage for him to say that and do that,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for a lot of these things. I'm
Yeah.
grateful. I'm grateful, and one of the things we can play this now, but one of the things that led to his firing is over the weekend. I mean, at least this is the cover story. This is the story that like Vanity Fair put out. Um, but I think there's probably some credence to it. That he gave a speech to the Heritage Foundation. They had a 50th anniversary gala, and he was the keynote speaker on Saturday or Sunday. And the speech, the clips of it went viral. Uh, Millions and millions of people saw this speech that he gave, this part of this speech anyway. And I want to share some of it here right now.
Might be time to start to reassess the terms we use to describe what we're watching. So when I started at Heritage, the presumption was, and this is a very Anglo-American assumption, that the debates we're having are kind of rational debates about the way to get to mutually agreed upon outcomes. Right? So like we all want the country to be more prosperous and free and people to be less oppressed or whatever. And so we're going to argue about tax rates. And I think higher tax gets us there. I'm a Keynesian and you disagree, you're an Austrian or whatever. But the objective is the same. And so we write our papers and they write their papers and may the best papers win. I don't think that's what we're watching now at all. I don't think we're watching a debate over how to get to the best outcome. I think that's completely wrong. And I've come to this conclusion, and I should say at the outset, I'm an Episcopalian, so don't take any theological advice from me because I don't have any. I grew up in the shallowest faith tradition that's ever been invented. It's not even a Christian religion at this point. I say with shame. But I'm just saying this as an observer of what's going on. There is no way to assess, say, the transgenderist movement with that mindset. Policy papers don't account for it at all. If you have people who are saying, I have an idea, let's castrate the next generation. Let's sexually mutilate children. Sorry, that's not a political debate. What? There's nothing to do with politics. What's the outcome we're desiring here? An androgynous population? Is that really what are we arguing for that? I don't think anyone could defend that as a positive outcome. But the weight of the government and a lot of corporate interests are behind that. Well, what is that? Well, it's irrational. If you say, well, I think abortion is always bad. Well, I think sometimes it's necessary. That's a debate I'm familiar with. But if you're telling me that abortion is a positive good, what are you saying? Well, you're arguing for child sacrifice, obviously. It's not about a teen girl gets pregnant and what do we do about that? And victims of rape. I get it. Of course I understand that. And I have compassion for everyone involved. But when the Treasury Secretary stands up and says, you know what you can do to help the economy, get an abortion. Well, that's like an Aztec principle, actually. There's not a society in history that didn't practice human sacrifice. Not one. I checked. Even the Scandinavians, I'm ashamed to say. It wasn't just the Mesoamericans, it was everybody.
I just have to pause right there. I'm part Scandinavian. And it is true. It is true. They did it. We did it. We did it as well. Everyone did. So this language that he's using,
it's theological.
Yes, he's describing the conflict in theological terms, not in political ones. And
he's describing politics, like what's happening now with power in terms of cosmic forces.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, no. This is. I mean, it's
punchline.
like the. No, this is. I'm not really telling a joke, but this is. This is. It's like the. I don't even know if the account is still up. I have maybe it's locked. I don't know. The Tradical, No True Scotist. His pinned tweet was, current events make a lot more sense when you believe that demons exist and they're active on the earth. And it's totally true. I mean, and that's Tucker's point, is that these are not policy, because he's addressing the Heritage Foundation. So, if you know anything about the Heritage Foundation, this is a massive conservative think tank, and it's donors that pay a bunch of money to nerds to write papers. And and he used to work there. It'd be part of it. And so he's very familiar with what they do. I mean, they do other stuff too. I'm not trying to, trash the Heritage Foundation, but he's saying writing a white paper on transgenderism isn't going to solve the issue. You're not dealing with policy proposals where you're going back and forth about what's the right, do we tinker with the tax rate this much or that much, 1% or 0.1%. Right. He's not talking about those, that it's a totally foreign world to movement conservatism, to conservative, NGOs like Heritage, to conservative politicians. All of this, they don't understand the war that is raging right now, many of them. And so he is bringing them up to speed. That is a spiritual war.
I mean, I know there's more to the clip and we should play it, but I think that's going to segue to what we're going to talk about next with the GP, the G3 responses to Christian nationalism. They're still operating in this world that has expired. We don't live in 1994 anymore. We don't live like Newt Gingrich isn't going to come up with a new, legislative package that's going to solve these things at the cultural level. This is something metaphysical.
Yeah. Let's let Tucker keep going here.
So that's what that is. Well, what's the point of child sacrifice? Well, there's no policy goal entwined with that. No, that's a theological phenomenon. And that's kind of the point I'm making. None of this makes sense in conventional political terms. When people or crowds of people, or the largest crowd of people at all, which is the federal government, the largest human organization in human history, decide that the goal is to destroy things, destruction for its own sake. Hey, let's tear it down. What you're watching is not a political movement, it's evil. So if you want to assess, and I'll put it in and I'll stop with this. I'll put it in non-political, or non-specific theological terms, and just say, if you want to know what's evil and what's good, what are the characteristics of those? And by the way, I think the Athenians would have agreed with this. This is not necessarily just a Christian notion. This is kind of I would say, widely agreed upon understanding of good and evil. What are its products? What do these two conditions produce? Well, good is characterized by order, calmness, tranquility, peace, whatever you want to call it, lack of conflict, cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. It's true, it is. And evil is characterized by their opposites: violence, hate, disorder, division, disorganization, and filth. So if you are all in on the things that produce the latter basket of outcomes, what you're really advocating for is evil. That's just true. I'm not calling for a religious war, far from it. I'm merely calling for an acknowledgement of what we're watching, which is not one, and I'm certainly not backing the Republican Party. Ugh. I'm not making a partisan point at all. I'm just noting what's super obvious. Like, those of us who are in our mid-50s are caught in the past in the way that we think about this. One side's like, no, I've got this idea, and we've got this idea, and let's have a debate about our ideas. They don't want a debate. Those ideas won't produce outcomes that any rational person would want under any circumstances. Mm-hmm. Those are manifestations of some larger force acting upon us. It's just so obvious. It's completely obvious. And I think two things. One, we should say that and stop engaging in these totally fraudulent debates where we are using the terms that we used in 1991 when I started at Heritage, as if maybe, I could just win the debate if I marshaled more facts. I've tried that, doesn't work. And two, maybe we should all take just like 10 minutes a day to say a prayer about it. I'm serious. Like, why not? And I'm saying that to you, not as some kind of evangelist. I'm literally saying that to you as an Episcopalian. The Samaritans of our time. I'm coming to you from the most humble and lowly theological position you can. I'm literally an Episcopalian, okay? And even I have concluded it might be worth taking just 10 minutes out of your busy schedule to say a prayer for the future, and I hope you will.
Well, I think Tucker has exposure to a lot more behind the scenes, and that's a very serious statement that he said. Tucker's not like an overtly religious guy, but I think when you operate at that level, you see things that defy rational political policy explanation, like he just said. You see things that defy all the myths that we operate under in regards to liberal democracy and the neutral world, the 20th century American myth. Mm-hmm. He's seeing things from a completely different vantage point. It's easy for us, you and I, and the people listening to this, to recognize that there's a spiritual war at play. But when Tucker comes out and he makes this his hallmark speech, his hallmark observation, this is the point that he was trying to drive home. You can see that there is a theological aspect to his own momentum, to the things that drive him, and therefore there's a theological aspect to getting him off air. They do not like this type of content, and the best thing that you can do, if you're appealing to Heritage Foundation donors, is like you should donate to the GOP. You should try to reelect Republican senators. Like you don't say go pray. You don't say take minutes out of your day. You don't say take minutes out, like 10 minutes out of your day and go pray about it right after saying that the GOP gives them the jitters.
Yeah,
Like
I know.
this is a
I know.
very serious statement.
I know. I know. I
So
could watch this 4 or 5 times. I've watched it several times.
yeah,
And all of it is true. Everything that he says is 100% true. And I think the powerful thing there, and this is where that report from Vanity Fair I think comes in, where about Rupert Murdoch saying that he gets really nervous about spiritual type language that's not allowed on
I
Fox
bet
News.
he does.
And
I
I'm
bet
sure
he does.
I'm sure it's true. I'm sure he doesn't like it. And apparently, like he had a fiance. He's been married like 15 times or something, and he had a fiance that left him because she thought like Tucker Carlson was some kind of religious prophet. Apparently, like this is the rumor.
That's what I'm saying. Like he's operating at a
Yeah.
different level than we can even see. Like
Yeah, maybe. And so Murdoch, that was the last straw for him. Maybe it was the speech. That's the
Yeah.
cover story, at least. That's the official story.
well,
Maybe it's true.
It's like these are all aspects to it. These are all straws that broke the camel's back for sure.
Yeah, and this might be the
Yeah.
final one.
Yeah.
And I just, I'm so impressed by it. We brought up, is he legit or not, or is he a psyop? At this point, like that speech, like I said, doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if he is or not. He is saying true things that have to be said today in this moment.
Mm-hmm. So, what he just said is much more courageous than like Russell Moore and even the G3 guys. Like,
oh man, I know.
Like they should be attuned to the spiritual battle at play.
Yep.
They should be attuned to the fact that we are facing a cosmic struggle, and they should be aware of the fact that there's only going to be one political outcome.
Yeah,
we're not going back to this like everyone kind of lives their own life in their own way. Like these are political struggles that are reflections of cosmic struggles.
Yeah, and so along those lines, we could bring up some of the these groups. So there's a whole bunch of people online who are have some prominence that are anti-Christian nationalists. They're very much opposed to Christian nationalism, and excuse me, they've been tweeting a lot, and they've been making a lot of posts online just about how bad Christian nationalism is and how dangerous it is and how bad Christendom was and things like this. But really, what they're doing is just clowning themselves. They're not. They're showing this very facile understanding of it. I mean, one of them didn't even read Stephen Wolf's book. It's like, I don't have time to read, or all of them basically. But one of them was like, well, I don't have time to read the whole thing. They tweet out the page where he says, well, I don't do any exegesis here because I assume the system of Reformed doctrine. I assume Protestant, Reformed Protestant political theory. I'm not going to rewrite everything Francis Turretin ever wrote on top of the 400 words I want to, or 400 pages I want to write. And so it's ludicrous. These guys don't take seriously anything that is being said. They don't engage with the actual arguments. It's really a clown show. And so I try not to take them too seriously because it's you shouldn't take them that seriously. They don't they don't engage in good faith.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. They don't engage good faith, and here's part of the problem. They expect us to take them seriously when they don't take Stephen Wolf seriously. Like he said, he recently said in a podcast, like, don't read my book. That's fine. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to make it like this. It's a long book. It's kind of dense. Like sometimes like, don't read my book. Just don't pretend like you did and start like pontificating about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like that's not operating in good faith. Yeah. Like he's like, these people like they have busy lives and they have a lot on their plate. Like if you don't want to read my book, like I'm fine. I'm not here to like sell books. But don't pretend like you know what you're talking about and that you're willing to engage with me at a level, like I said, at a serious level.
Yeah, I like Josh Boyce, one of these guys. He gave this summary of Wolf's argument, and Wolf, in the replies, is like, that's not what my book says at all.
He says the opposite.
Yeah, it said like the opposite. It was like he was saying that the civil magistrate has the sword and the keys. Like that's what
Right.
Wolf was arguing, and I had to reply to him like, dude, if you were, I've taught for many years, and I'm like, if you were in my class giving a book report, and you very clearly write about the argument the author is making, and the author would not recognize that argument at all, I would fail you and make you redo the assignment.
Yeah.
Right. It's unacceptable to do that. Right. That just the basic standard of good faith is if the person's argument, they don't recognize, like if your perception of the argument is totally unrecognizable to them, you don't get it. You are the problem, not Stephen. And they'll go on Twitter and they'll complain like, oh, you aren't understanding our argument, or you need to read the whole book or whatever. It's like, well, that's a you problem, man. That's not an us problem.
Yeah, or like don't read the whole book, but don't like he literally said
and
the
just
opposite.
shut up about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But like they're being sent out to do it. Like so like Michael O'Fallon is this guy who is on the board of G3. And it's clear, like, I mean, he's the one that employs James Lindsay. And so, like, James Lindsay says all sorts of stupidity on his Twitter account all the time, attacking Christian nationalism. Like, number one, why is this atheist neckbeard loser, right, being brought in to talk about Christian things and Christian political theory and being used as a battering ram against Christians? What is going on there? And number two, they're doing the same thing with these G3 guys.
Yeah, did you see the introduction? Like people were posting like an excerpt from the introduction of James Lindsay's book, Cynical Theories. And
no,
he
I didn't
said,
see this. What
like,
did it say?
Oh yeah, so in the introduction of Cynical Theories, he says that like he's part of his motivation for writing this is because he thinks that the use of like LGBT propaganda is actually undermining the LGBT community, and that he wants to fight for trans rights and stuff, but he thinks that they're being like abused. And the whole thing, like the whole introduction is like him justifying that they do have rights, that gays and lesbians have been like underrepresented and mistreated,
Good
like all this
grief.
stuff. Like so look,
that's their golden boy. Yeah,
that is their golden boy, and look at who their friends are, and look at who their enemies are. And I think but I think part of the problem. So the reason James Lindsay is actually in that spot, unfortunately, is because there haven't been very many Christian theorists who have been able to articulate these things that have even cared to deal with it. So that's part of the problem too. Like, why haven't they been listening to? Well, why haven't any Christians stepped up and started like expositing these things? Like James Lindsay was one of the only ones that was recognizing what was going on in the academy and studying critical. Christians should be studying critical theory, and they're not.
And
so what happens?
Him.
Yeah, what happens is you have to look to James Lindsay.
Yeah.
And then what happens is you have to defend James Lindsay against Stephen Wolf. And then what happens is you find yourself on like the completely opposite side of what should be your friends in an obvious spiritual, theological, cosmic struggle. That's what's happening. So anyways, that's the way I see it. But we should talk about that like for a little bit, just in general, like why are they responding this way? And I think part of the problem is that they've digested and absorbed the myth, like the liberal myths of the American century. Like for all their talk about like sticking to the Bible and all that stuff, like they are the personification of like absorption of like regime narratives.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They can't get out of it. They can't escape it.
Yeah, and it's like these are all Baptists too, and so I'm not looking to pick fights with any particular theological tradition or anything like that. But like historical Baptists these guys would be unrecognizable to like John Gill, right? You raise John Gill from the dead and says, hey, look at the Baptists we got here, and he examines like the things they believe and their doctrine. He would think that these are Anabaptists, and would condemn them. Like, well, that's what they are.
They'd be called secularists, they'd be called atheists.
Yeah. It's and like they have no idea. Like and it's, to be fair to them, like I don't think it's malice, at least to this extent. They have no idea that there's anything other than liberal secularism. Right. That's the only thing on the menu for them.
Right.
And so they hear about Christendom. I mean, just looking at, like I did a Twitter space yesterday, and like looking at his article that he wrote about Christendom, and he just assumes it's bad. He doesn't make an argument that it's bad, right? He just assumes that this is a bad thing.
Well, what they do is they take the failures of something, like, because obviously, like, there's no golden age, there's no perfect
Yeah.
situation, so they'll like nitpick from the comfort of their air conditioned office. They'll nitpick at like failures, and
Yeah.
they'll
Yeah.
judge from that perch. It's a complete abuse of the historical process, by the way. Like, you never would have seen like Calvin and Luther and like even like further like west, like in England, like any of like the Puritans. None of these people
No.
would have looked at history that way, the development of history this way.
No.
Like,
No way.
that's not how people thought until the modern age. You see, it's a very modernist, liberal thing to critique the Christian past, and they've absorbed that methodology for their
Yeah.
judgment of history.
All of this is downstream from 1789. Like, it is, they are downstream from the French Revolution and from modern thought, modern political arrangements. And they think that's all there is. That's the only possibility, and that's the biblical thing. It's biblical to have a secularist society. And the problem with this, and the funny thing is, like, they think that trash world, the all the tranny everything that surrounds us and pervades all of life, they think that came from Christendom, and that came from cultural nominal Christianity. Like, it's the most
because
ridiculous bait and switch that they could
they don't
possibly
know
pull.
what Christendom is. Yeah,
I know. Yeah.
yeah, they have no idea. You know,
I mean, I
and,
saw it was a good, like, one of those guys was tweeting about how Christendom was a failure. It was a huge failure, and it's like, it was 1,500 years long of an entire continents being evangelized successfully.
It's true.
I hope we have more failures like that. I mean,
Yeah.
come on. I hope the next 1,500 years are such a failure like that. I mean, come
They're
on.
like, well, the problem with Christendom is you get like a lot of nominal Christian people who think they're saved, and I'm looking out like at all the mega churches. I'm looking at all like the well marketed like Christianity Incorporated
Mhm.
today, like, and I'm just looking around. I'm like, nominal Christianity. Like, if you want, like, if you need a testament to nominal Christianity, just look around.
Yeah.
Like, we are like
Yeah.
secularism has produced way more of a nominal Christianity. The other thing too
Oh,
is
yeah.
like they get all caught up in like saying things like, well, like Christian nationalists don't believe that God is sovereign over salvation, that they have to do it. Well, actually, you're the one that's saying that we have to have secularism or God can't save people. Like, you're the one that's
Or they're
making
all
that
going to be
argument.
nominal Christians,
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's and the other. I mean, one of the other things too is, like, I talked about this yesterday as well. There's this idea that I think like these guys have this whole mindset that that only maybe a very small percentage of people in churches are saved, right? It's a very slim percent. It's the narrow way versus the broad way, and very, very small number of people. And the way they would determine whether someone is truly regenerate or not usually is, are they a theology nerd? Right? Do they get real nerdy about their systematic theology and real excited about it? Like, those are the really saved guys, right? The person who is half of a standard deviation to the left of the bell curve, that doesn't really know any theology, that doesn't understand the Bible very well, but of what they do understand, what they're capable of understanding, they're obedient to Jesus, right? Those people are nominal. That's their view. It's like people that are just, simple, regular people. Those people can't be saved because they're not theology nerds. Like, that's the attitude that these guys have. And so, like, some of it is just, there's this prejudice against anyone who has less than 120 IQ, right? There's prejudice against the NPC, right? I mean, and I don't use NPC in like this pejorative sense. It's just the people who do what they're told, that look to authority to tell them what to do, what to believe, and they do it one way or the other. That's how humanity is. Like, there are a lot of people who are just looking for someone good to tell them what to believe, right? Mm-hmm. They're not going to be capable of thinking it all through, right? That's part of this too. And part of the whole discussion of Christian nationalism is that, like, when Jesus calls people sheep, like there are a lot of people like that that need to be led well, that are not capable of reading some dense 17th century systematic theology and shaping their worldview around it. They're looking for a pastor that could break things down into like a third grade level and tell them, right, this is how how things are. This is what's true and what's good and what's beautiful. That's what people need. And guys like this act like people like that can't be saved. I mean, it really is this like very strong prejudice against simple, decent folks. And that gets into like the lone bulwark stuff as well, right? It gets into the MAGA Republican, where it's just a working class chud, right? To use internet lingo, right? They don't like the working class chud who he doesn't know anything about the Bible, right? He knows a little bit. He knows, I believe in Jesus, and I need to. These are the things that the Bible says is bad, and this is the things that the Bible says is good, and it's very simple understanding. And they act like those people can't possibly be saved, right? They can't possibly be saved because, well, they like Joel Osteen, right? So they must be bound for hell. And to believe me, Joel Osteen's not a good guy. He's this charlatan, snake, horrible, evil, false teacher. I'm not defending him. But the typical Joel Osteen watcher, they don't know any better. And part of the problem is these guys are so prejudiced against the typical Joel Osteen watcher. They're never going to minister to those people. They're never going to say something that appeals to them. And ironically, the thing that would appeal that does appeal to the typical Joel Osteen or Paula White watcher is a Christianity that is aggressive in confronting the issues of our day, that is aggressive in attacking transgenderist movement and aggressive in attacking LGBT demonic stuff going on in our country. People want that.
And not just attacking it like intellectually or whatever, but attacking it politically. Like it's part of the role of the state to maintain and preserve our way of life. And these sexual
calling
deviancy,
on the state to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. Yeah. In sexual deviancy, it's a cultural, political, it's a subversion, and it is part of the function of the state to maintain order, to address those things. Yeah. And those are like they are informed by religion, by Christianity, and so Christianity has that function to play in maintaining like a healthy society. The idea that
absolutely,
because what's going on, and Tucker just said it, with all these things is there is an anti-Christian political movement reflecting cosmic struggle at play. The idea that neutrality is something that can be recovered or sought after, it's so beyond the realm of possibility that you just wonder if these guys are even operating in the same world as we are, and they're not. They are not.
They absolutely aren't. They literally think that secularism and liberal society and this neutral marketplace of ideas we can get back to that somehow.
People don't get that. That's the thing that was taken over. What happened is there was a positive vision for culture and civilization. It was called Christendom. Then they secularized it. They made it neutral, and a neutral world is not a self-preserving.
Yeah, nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah, it is. It is. And during that time, during the secularization process, bad actors who wanted political power came in and they captured it. They captured the state. They captured the liberal state, and they're turning it into something with a negative vision, something with their own, their own vision of how things should be.
Yeah. And it's a positive vision, but it's bad. Yeah.
Well, it's a positive vision from their own perspective, but Christians have no part in that. But you can't return to the thing that was taken over, because this is a point that's made by reactionary thinkers all throughout history. They took advantage of the things that we valued, which was free speech and all that stuff. But when they're in power, that's not one of their priorities. So they're going to cancel it off. That's what cancel culture is. Yeah. You know what I mean? So they leverage our own rhetoric, our own accomplishments, our own historical heritage against us. And then they take it away, and Christianity has no place to play in the society anymore.
It's totally this is why it's important for people to read Saul Alinsky and Rules for Radicals, because you see the entire game at play. All the things all our principles they will use against us, and beat us over the head with them. I mean, you see this with the U.S. Constitution today. Don't you care about the Constitution? It's a free market. It's a private business. Why can't believe Ron DeSantis is attacking Disney World over blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, like the adaptation has to be that. It has to be, those principles were great when we had that society. They were wonderful. And I would love to one day for my grandchildren or great-grandchildren to have a society like that once again.
Mm-hmm.
But that ain't going to happen until we absolutely crush the left, until they cease to exist in our country, right? That's the only way. That's the only way this is going to happen. They have to be totally and utterly defeated and ashamed and brought low.
Yeah, and in fact, the only way you can operate that way is if you have Christendom, is if you have like a cultural, religious hegemony.
Yeah, there has to be some other positive vision.
Yes.
It can't just be a vacuum, because it's going to be filled by something. Like, that's what these guys do not get. There has to be something in place. There is no neutrality, right? You either have Christendom or you have chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
You either have Christendom or you have Demonville, right? Those are the options, right? You don't have, look at this wonderful neutral world where we could have pluralism and this is great. No, that's the on-ramp. That's the on-ramp to Demonville. That's what it is. It's what it's always been. And people need to understand this. And again, like, this stuff is not like this intellect. I mean, we need to understand the intellectual arguments and so forth, but they need to understand it in order to spur people to action. And so that's part of it, in terms of like reaching the lone bulwark, the mega American, white evangelical, working class and middle class people. It's theology that produces action, right? It's theology that produces people doing things to fight evil. And they could reach all of these nominal Christians and take the nominalism away and make it very real, right? Make it very real and very genuine. But they would rather not do that because we might win if we did that. Right? We can't win. What if we win? That would produce nominal Christians. So that's bad. Like, we might have Mayberry in it. Mayberry, as you know, Russell Moore told us this. Mayberry is worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. You might know. It leads to hell just as certainly as Sodom and Gomorrah does. And it's such an idiot. I mean, not just idiotic. It's evil to say that. It's demonic.
Well, again,
to say that.
it denies the sovereignty of God, because like the idea that they have to, work against the creation of Mayberry or something like that in order to get real Christians. I mean, that's a denial of God's sovereignty too. Why can't God work within? Like, I think God is glorified when we have cultural institutions that look to the heavens. Yeah. Of course, it's a human society. Of course, it's still fallen society. Like, we haven't been glorified yet. Like, the eschaton is ahead of us. Like,
it's we are in an imperfect world, and it's going to continue to be that way. And one of the points that I like to make with all this discussion is that, I mean, you look at Jesus' parable of the soils, right? You've got the rocky soil and the thorny soil and the good soil and the soil by the way. Well, with this discussion of, what's the civil magistrate? What is a Christian civil magistrate, a Christian ruler, a Christian prince? What's his involvement in that, right? Because he can't make people believe, right? He can't make people, like, you can't hold a gun to someone's head and say, you need to believe in Jesus now or else. Right, you can't do that and make change their heart. Right, we all agree on that. We all agree. But what he can do is he could till that soil. Right, he could take rocky ground and bring the plow in, and all of a sudden now that soil is pretty good for planting. And is every seed going to take? No, not every seed is gonna germinate and blossom. But a lot more will. Right, he could do that. I think it's a good, a valuable, correct analogy.
I mean, God uses means to accomplish his ends. I mean, that's the thing. Like, they're like, well, God doesn't need the king to do. Of course, but God uses means. Yeah. God uses means. Can he save somebody in Bolshevik Russia? Yes, he very much can. Can he save someone in Elizabethan England? Yes. Like God uses means, and it's our function as Christians to honor him in everything that we do, including wielding political power.
Yeah, and this is a point I made in my most recent article. Hopefully, we'll link it here in the show. But in my most recent article, like, speaking of means, right? The microcosm of a kingdom is the household, and the Apostle Paul instructs Christian fathers to create Christian culture, to create cultural Christianity, right? That he commands them to create cultural Christianity in their households. And that's a means, right? The father doesn't hold a gun to his son's head and say, you believe in Jesus or else, right?
Yeah.
Any more than the magistrate is able to do that to affect this child's heart, right?
Yeah.
He can't do that. But are there instrumental means that God uses throughout their life? I mean, none of these guys would deny that, I hope. None of these guys would say, oh, that father should just be neutral, right? He should just have a marketplace of ideas inside his household. It should be a pluralistic society. He should also represent Buddha and Hinduism and Allah and atheism to his child, right? No, that would be insane. That would be insane. And not just insane, it would be rebelling against what God explicitly commanded for Christian families to do. So why would that be bad if the father of the nation did that and produced the idea of the Lord in his nation?
They can't think about the father of a nation because they're obsessed with secular liberalism, where everyone's an individual and nobody has kin groups, nobody has tribes, there's no nationalities because we're all the same.
There's no king.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like this is just part and parcel of their Americanized, the absorption of the American myth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I think we haven't beaten that horse dead because there's still more beating that horse needs. But I think that's enough. That's enough for today.
Yes. Yes.
So CJay, what work have you done? I know you published some things on Contra Mundum on your Substack that you want people to take a look at. Tell us about those.
Yeah, you can go there. On my most recent piece, I was actually republishing an older piece.
Then don't read it, guys. It's not
just whatever. It's kind of a leftover from years ago, but I thought it was a good piece, so I put it up there.
I remember reading it back in the day. Yeah.
I'm trying to refine my stuff. So, anyways, cjingle.substack.com, and you can find me there. You could also check out the Chronicles Magazine podcast, where I just had a really good conversation with one of my own influences, Paul Gottfried, over there. That was episode 10. So I had that. So you can always find what I'm up to over there. The other thing
what'd you record today?
Well, today I talked to Pedro Gonzalez about he's been really harsh on MAGA Incorporated, MAGA Inc., and the Trump world. So I talked to him a little bit about those things, and he just basically he sees them as like sort of a branding grift at this point, like completely different spirit than 2016. And I basically agree with that. Like, I'm still like I would love to see Trump beat Biden and all that, but like I'm underwhelmed by what he could have done with his potential at this point. So anyways, that's it for now for me.
Yeah. And for me, we have an upcoming podcast appearance on Right Response with Joel Webbins. So that's going to be coming out, I think, on Tuesday. Unless there's some editing snafus or maybe we were too controversial. No, Joel will publish us. But
we were very calm.
Yeah. Well, speak for yourself. But no,
I'm always calm.
Yeah, you are. It's the Greco gum. We had that. We also, I also have a bunch more articles. I just had a recent article this week that I published that I'd love you all to take a look at news.gab.com about cultural Christianity, and it's about the Christian's duty to produce cultural Christianity. So it's very controversial in the same what we just talked about for the last 20 minutes. It's all along those lines. So if you're interested in that, please check that out. If you've made it through the entire podcast, thank you so much. We really appreciate all our listeners. The last episode we had was one of the most watched and listened to ones since we got started, and we hope that it continues to grow. So share the podcast with friends, with people you think might be interested.
Do we have time? Do we have time to have We're All Gonna Make It on?
Unfortunately, we're out of time for We're All Gonna Make It. Maybe next time we'll have some time for him, but I got to get going. I know you do too. But yeah, please like, subscribe, share. We really appreciate it. Comment. Tell us what you think. Tell us how much you disagree with all of CJay's takes. And for all of us here at Contra Mundum, I'm Andrew Isker. He's CJay Engel. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.